Welcome to this episode of the Leading Well podcast, hosted by Zach and Bowden. This podcast is an ongoing conversation to provide you with the practical tools, inspiring stories, to awaken the passions God has placed in you, to help you lead well, both in the church and in the community.
Welcome to our Leading Well podcast. My name is Zach and Bowden, the host of this podcast. And during the month of August, we are just going to rebroadcast some of the most popular episodes we had this past year. And so if you have not listened to this episode, you are in for a treat today. We're going to rebroadcast a conversation that I had with Lance Yarborough. Almost 2 years ago, I guess it had been now. Lance was in a serious car accident. And he's going to share through this story a little bit of his journey and the journey he went on and where he's at today. And just an incredible story of faith and of friends and connections, and that God is good, even in the midst of a pretty crazy situation. And so I hope you enjoy this conversation with Lance Yarborough.
Welcome to our next Leading Well conversation, and I am excited for this next one. Today we're talking with Lance Yarborough. So Lance, thank you for being here with us.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Today, our leadership discussion we're going to have is being able to learn and reflect on things from our past that help us, that challenge us, that grow us, that help us be able not just to lead, but to follow Christ a little bit more. And so we all have things in our past that we've learned from. But Lance, you had a car accident a year and a half, 2 years ago now. And we want to talk about that and things that God has worked in your life and through your life, and these things that he's taught you, even in our conversation today. And so thank you for your willingness to share and be honest and your authenticity, being authentic, even in this conversation. And I know it's been a hard road for you in a lot of ways in the last year and a half, 2 years. And so for you just to be here to share is a testimony to God's grace and God's goodness in your life and stuff.
Absolutely.
So you don't need to share lots of details, but maybe just give us a kind of a quick picture of what happened in your life. Yeah, about a year and a half, 2 years ago with your accident.
Okay. Yeah, it was August of last year. It was a Saturday evening. I was doing some work on my daughter's vehicle. We had gotten her a new to us used vehicle for her to take to college, and was just trying to do some maintenance on it to get it ready so she could take it off the Phoenix when she went to Grand Canyon. And had it jacked up in my driveway. An unfortunate series of events. The jack slipped and the car fell on me while I was partially under it. And I'll save the gory details, but it basically kind of crushed my face. And in the result of all that, ended up losing sight in my right eye. Had a lot of facial damage, multiple surgeries later. The long-term effect is, facial numbness. I can't smell or taste for the most part. No vision in my right eye. But beyond that, things are going very well for us. But yeah, it was touch and go there for a few days for sure. And then for the weeks after that.
Yeah, it was a sniffing event, and your road to recovery, a year and a half, 2 years now later, it's still not over. I know. Yep. As we're recording this, you have a surgery coming up here, and so it's still a process for you as well. Mm-hmm. And so I'm sure as you've walked through this road over the last year and a half, 2 years for you, there's been a lot of things you have learned about yourself, about God, about other people. And so just would love to unpack that here for the next few minutes. But what has surprised you the most as you've walked this road to recovery?
I'll say the thing that honestly does surprise me is I'm still here. And how well my recovery has gone. I've been just blown away by the support from the doctors and the medical teams that have been a part of my recovery. There are so many things about the accident that we can see God's hand in. Had I been slightly further under the car when it collapsed, I almost certainly would have died on the scene. And that would have been very traumatic for my family to come out and see me there, expecting me to come in and go to dinner. The doctor said that the penetration of the car into my skull If it had gone just a couple of millimeters farther, there would have been almost assuredly an unknown amount of brain damage. But, praise God, none of that was the case. My recovery has been, I think, pretty awesome. Like I said, the lack of smell and taste, the lack of peripheral vision, they certainly affect my daily life. But just the fact that I can pretty much do anything I want with no real restrictions is, such an incredible blessing. I've had to adapt to things like pouring water into a cup. Seem really easy for a person with two eyes. But after I completely miss the cup, or I miss my toothbrush with the tube of toothpaste, things like that, you realize you need to make some just changes in how you do little things in life. But yeah, just the amount that I have recovered despite ongoing surgeries. Hopefully this will be one of the very last ones coming up later this week. But I've got full mental capacities. I've got full dexterity. All my limbs are still here. Just from where I was the night of the accident to today, I look at it as pretty much a miracle.
Yeah, it is a miracle, that God's grace on you in that. And, but I also know that it's been a difficult journey for you guys as well. And for you and for your wife and for your kids, especially. And, what would you say has been some of the most difficult parts of this road for you guys?
I would say for me early on, I was in a dark place. Anxiety and depression are two emotional responses that I've never really had to deal with. I've had family members who had some anxiety, and walking with them through those moments where those occur, okay, that's one thing. But again, it's never been my problem. And in the days and early weeks after the accident, it was very much a part of my life, daily, hourly, at times. And it's one of those things I'm kind of ashamed to admit, but at some level I felt like people that struggled with those things, they just didn't trust God enough. The triggers were irrational things, and you just had a small mind. Maybe, I don't know, my wife will kill me, but saying something like that. But I really at some level didn't appreciate it.
Yeah. And
having gone through it now, I can totally see from the other side. And walking through that was really difficult. But I think part of it was as my recovery continued, the depression and the anxiety became much less of a concern for me. And in a lot of ways, God was there. He brought me out of it as I was dealing with the anger and the frustrations of what I had gone through. He can take that kind of stuff. And I think my faith was a huge portion of that becoming less of a factor for me. Still, I would never say to someone now that, your faith just isn't strong enough. That's why you suffer from those things by any stretch. But for me, as I walked through the recovery, my faith did replace some of those things. I still have some PTSD, and my mind will go back to the day of the accident at times, but I can now just turn away from that, and not let myself get so caught up in those emotions. But yeah, for me, that was a totally foreign thing to have to deal with. And yeah, it was very difficult, especially for those first few weeks after the accident.
There's a lot you shared in just the difficult road there, but I think what I hear you saying, you've learned a lot.
Yeah.
About God, about other people, about yourself. Why don't you just expand on that a little bit? What have you learned about yourself through this last year and a half, 2 years?
Yeah. The joke is I'm no longer bulletproof. That's pretty clear and obvious. I do make a great pirate. But honestly, I think for a big part of me, it helped me recognize what was important in my identity, or what I was let being important in my identity. That I found portions of my identity outside of Christ. It was, my physical abilities. God gifted me with good coordination, and those were things that I kind of took for granted, but I also put too much emphasis on.
Sorry about that. Let's keep on going. I'll make sure I turn my phone off there.
But those physical abilities, athleticism, things like that I put far too much of my identity in those. And when they were taken away at some level, it was a significant loss to me. Mm-hmm. So a part of me, that's what I think led me down into some of the depression that I was feeling, is I didn't know if I'd ever be able to do those things again. Mm-hmm. I became angry that, God would allow this to happen. I wasn't sure, at some level, if I even wanted to live with where I would be afterwards. And those things were a challenge. I would say I'd never had any suicidal thoughts, but again, there were times that I wondered, would it not have been better if I'd have just died that day? Mm. But, I think that a part of me that found my identity in those things, just that part of me just sort of died through the accident. But as the recovery progressed, as my mental attitude changed, within that, my struggle with God through all of that, I would say that there wasn't a light switch moment, but he slowly and steadily revealed to me that, my identity wasn't in those things. That I really just needed to trust in the fact that he had preserved me, and that he did have a purpose for me that was outside of the things that I might have thought were important. There was a speaker at our winter camp with our students just a few weeks ago, Pastor B, and he said, if you have breath, you have purpose. And that really resounded with me, looking back on my recovery, because that was where I had gotten to. I realized that God really did have a purpose for me. And while I can't change the physical damage that had occurred, those circumstances are still there, but I didn't need to take on this new identity of a person who suffered an accident and, is blind in one eye and has all these, challenges and struggles. While it is a part of me, it's not my identity. It would be very easy to take on a victim mentality and just let that be what everybody knows me for. But I don't want that to be the case. I feel like God has given me a new way to connect and interact with people, and a new avenue of really sharing the gospel with people in my own story. But my identity is not totally tied up in being in recovery from an accident. My identity isn't about who I was before the accident. I would say that I've very much come to terms, and gratefully so, that really my identity is in Christ. And if it weren't that, then I think I'd still be, living with that depression and the anxiety that I struggled with for so long. So just moving past that and really kind of recentering who I am and what my purpose in life is was a big part of going through that recovery.
What have you learned about others as you've walked through this?
I'll say the response to my physical appearance has been kind of funny to watch. Kids at Walmart, at Home Depot, as I walk by with the eye patch pushing a shopping cart, it was kind of fun to watch their response, and then their parents' response of, "Oh, don't say anything," not knowing that I was one of the first ones to crack the pirate jokes and things like that. People struggled with, how do I interact with this person? And I worked hard to try and take that stress or that concern away. If it was just a chance meeting, it was not that big of a deal. But as I met new people that, I would have more interaction with, I just wanted to be at ease. My family, we often deal with trauma through humor. And so that's been one of the things that I've tried to do, is just put people at ease. But I'll say one of the neat things has been that, people are willing to listen to my story. When they come up and ask, do you mind me, asking what happened? It really opens the door for a different kind of conversation than I would have had with them otherwise. I remember specifically, we had taken my wife's car and just have an oil change. And it was at the dealership, and a car salesman came up, and he and I got to talking, and he asked that question. And for the next 15 minutes, he didn't tell me anything about a car that he had for sale. Mm-hmm. He heard the gospel. And people are willing to listen to a story of my own experience and how God got me through that in a different way than just walking up to some random person on the street with a Bible tract. Those are important things too, I believe, but it's just been a neat opportunity to share, and people are open to that.
Mm-hmm. What about, another way to ask this question. What have you, I know for the last few years, and not in our families have been part of this, but even learning just to be dependent upon other people, you've had to go through a lot over the last few years, and even a sense of having to be a little more reliant. You go back to, you said even some pride stuff earlier.
Yep.
What have you learned about others in that capacity as well, of learning just to be more open for help? Yeah.
Obviously, I needed a lot of help early on, both physically, and my family needed help. And it was really cool to see specifically the people from New Life, how they came around us, people in our small group, elders and staff that visited me in the hospital, that came and sat with me at my house so that my family could get out of there and go see the sun, because I needed it pretty dark early on. But yeah, so one of the guys in our small group literally came and sat at my house with me for an entire afternoon. You came and spent an entire day with me at the hospital so my wife could take my kids to school. We needed that outside kind of help, and people were quick to respond to it. And it wasn't that I specifically needed someone to do anything, just someone there. It put my wife's mind at ease, knowing that she could get out and go run errands or go grab a Starbucks or whatever. But people were quick to step in whatever way was needed. People brought food. They came over. They cleaned our house. Physically, I needed more help than I would have ever thought I needed. Early on, I needed an escort just to get me to the bathroom. I could take care of things there by myself, but I needed help getting up out of the chair, walking down the hall, and then getting back to my chair. It was a pretty limited life that I had there for a few days. But again, part of me, that pride, that was a very difficult thing for me to accept, is that I needed that kind of help. I had seen my mom and her health really deteriorate, and even my dad, as he battled lung cancer, really starting to need a lot more physical assistance. And it was just, again, it was that pride. I shouldn't need those things. And so it was hard for me to accept the help that was offered. But now looking back on it, I'm incredibly grateful for it. Mm-hmm. And that's an area that, going forward, I hope to be able to help others in whatever way that looks like, to go through those kinds of difficulties. But yeah, specifically the body at New Life, the members of our small group, the folks that I work with came and visited me at the hospital. I think it was the day that you were there, and they wore me out just by hanging around and talking. But people were so willing to step in whatever way. When I first went back to work, a coworker out at the base, who happens to be a neighbor, he drove me to work for 2 weeks and brought me back home at the end of the day. So people were just so quick to help in whatever ways they could.
Yeah.
So again, it took some humility in accepting that, asking for it when it was needed, and accepting it early on. But now there's, gratitude that they were there for us. And, we never really felt like we were lacking in help and support.
Cool. What have you learned about God through this journey for you?
I'd say the first thing is, I'm never alone. Even in the darkest parts of my depression, I never felt like God had abandoned me. He was there listening to me, railing against him for what I'd gone through. I struggled that my plans for life, I felt like had been ruined. But I never felt like I was alone. So for me, that was a big deal. Earlier in my teenage years, I kind of felt like I had this big separation from God just in my own faith walk, but I did not feel that really for a single day going through my recovery. I felt like he was right there with me. He wasn't listening to what my wishes would have been necessarily, but and really that's the second big thing is that I came to trust him more. I wouldn't have chosen to go through the things that I went through, but my faith, my confidence in God and my identity in him it was strengthened through that rather than fractured and broken. I can trust him. I've never been alone. I can trust him and that ultimately that he loves me very much. Throughout my recovery, he showed that love in lots of different ways. We talked about, some of that came through the people that came around us and supported us. Just that comfort of his presence when the future was completely unsure. Scripture talks about this peace that surpasses all understanding. Like I live that. And, again, it's one of those things that is part of my message whenever I get a chance to talk to anybody. That peace, it wasn't tied to my circumstances. It was in spite of my circumstances. That he loved me and he had a plan and a purpose for me. Like I said, I got to see God's love through the people that came alongside us. We had people go with my daughter and my wife to Phoenix to drop her off at college. The way that the people showed God's love to us was significant. And those people that helped, I hope that they know that in what they did for us, that they were very much showing God's love in those things that they did. Because I think that's an important thing is a lot of times whenever we do something like that, it can be awkward and after the fact, we may not see it, but that person on the receiving end sees it completely differently. So for all those that came by and did anything for us, thank you. For those that prayed for us, thank you. It really did make a big difference in helping us along the road. And I'd honestly say the final thing is, God's not done with me yet. Like I said, if I still have breath, I still have purpose. So my hope is that I can be obedient and walk the path that God has for me, to share my story with whoever that I can, that needs to hear that message of hope and trust and just faith that no matter what's going through our lives, that God is there for us. And again, he's never going to give up on us. He loves us, and his plan is perfect, and we can trust in that. So I'd say those are the big things that God revealed to me during that recovery time.
Thanks for sharing, and thanks for just your willingness to be honest and real, even through a difficult situation. Sometimes it's easy for us as Christians, and maybe especially, to go, "Oh, God was good, God was great, and He walked me through it, and it was okay." And God is all those things very much,
very much,
and we're grateful for all those things. But there's a sense of reality. I'd even say more of a depth when we walk through some of those hardships that we see God at work. And so I thank you for your willingness to to share the depth of God's love in your life and God's goodness in your life in this conversation. If we all have stuff, Hopefully, you would probably say this more than I would. Hopefully it's not a car accident like that for anyone else. But if somebody, we all have our stuff in our life, maybe things that we're currently going through, things we have gone through, or the reality of things we are going to go through. Yep. What would be your hope? What would be your prayer for somebody who's walking through hard stuff? Now, as you walk through this hard thing, that you would want somebody else to grasp.
Yeah, I'd say first off, don't try and do it by yourself. I think part of our fallen human nature is, and part of what Satan wants us to do is just try and muscle through it. We isolate ourselves from those that can help us because we might be ashamed. I didn't want people to see my busted up face, or the fact that I couldn't get myself off the couch to go to the restroom. I think it's so easy for us to get caught up in those kind of, again, prideful things. Or we don't want to put people out. We don't want to accept that help because we feel like we're a burden or a nuisance. But in reality, those opportunities for other people to help us can bring a level of comfort that we need. It can bring us, a message of hope and peace, potentially. But, God never intended us to do these things by ourselves. So first and foremost, don't isolate yourself from those that want to help, that can help. It may be as simple as just somebody sitting with you at a doctor's appointment. It could be coming over and, helping you clean out your garage. But take the help, ask for help when you need it. Within that, if there's a, depression, anxiety, any of the responses that are, damaging psychologically, don't sit on those by yourself. Like I said, I used to think that those were irrational things. But if those are part of the response that somebody's having, those are real. The emotions that we have, despite whatever the triggers may be, those are real, and we need to deal with those. So counseling, talking to a doctor, seeking help for, whatever that mental state might be, is encouraged. Just trying to pray those things away. Prayer should certainly be a part of that. But God also gave us doctors and counselors. His word talks a lot about seeking counsel from others. So I would encourage people to seek all aspects of, getting the help that they need. And like I said, just don't push God aside in that recovery. Yeah. Run to him instead of away from him because you're angry at whatever the circumstances may be. He's with you no matter what. He's with you in the highs and in the lows. And just embracing him in that, it's okay. He can take being angry at him. I can attest to that very much. But just don't give up on that, to come back to it and let that be your crutch, because that's what God is. Yeah. It's not a crutch of just, making me feel better about life. It is, I am nothing without this. Yeah. And I will fall every time without it. It's in my weakness that his strength shines through. So don't be ashamed by that. Don't be, feeling like you're a nuisance and you just don't want people around because you feel bad about yourself. Embrace the help that's offered, seek the help that's needed, and really trust in God through it and seek him in it. Those would probably be the big things I would encourage people.
Let me just summarize it. Here's what I think I heard you say in two different categories. So one, if you're the individual who's walking through hardship, hey, pursue God, don't push him away. Yep. Pursue people, don't isolate yourself.
Yes.
And three, it's okay.
Yeah.
Hardships are hard. And we don't need to pretend them away and go if I'm a Christian, especially if I'm a Christian, I shouldn't have hardships. Yeah. That's
very much not the case. One of my favorite passages is John 16:33. It's Jesus is talking to his disciples and he says, in this world, you will have trouble, but take heart, I've overcome the world. Yeah. I mean, he tells us that these things are going to happen.
Yeah.
And we're foolish if we don't think they're going to. The rain falls on the good and the bad.
Yeah.
We're all going to have good days and bad days. And some of those bad days, they're really hard.
Yeah.
And they may not seem like there's really any kind of light at the end of this tunnel. And that's when we need to take heart that Jesus has overcome the world, that there is hope, even if our circumstances never change. I don't expect to get sight back in my eye. There's a good chance I'm never going to get my smell and taste back. My life is very full, So even if our circumstances don't change, that we can still have a very full and amazing life. And God has a purpose for us. If I have breath, I have purpose. And that those things can bring a ton of encouragement in that darkness.
So pursue God, pursue other people, and know that hardships are coming.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing I heard you say, if you're the person life is good at right now, or if life is not good for you, what I hear you saying is, hey, go pursue people. Don't just assume their life, like they're having a hard time. They just want to be by themselves.
Yeah.
Look for ways to show incredible love and encouragement and servanthood.
Yeah.
And just don't be, you don't necessarily need to be at a spot where you're like overtaking their lives.
Yeah.
But pursue them. Show incredible amount of love, especially if it's significant hardships in people's lives. Be willing to step in and help, and just don't go, they'll call when they need help.
Yeah. And I'll say that was one of the things. We had lots of people, unsure of what they could do for us. And it was comforting to know, hey, we're praying for you.
Yeah.
Like, if we can do anything, here's my number, or you know how to get in touch with me. And I had people come over and help with things. Or I had somebody come over and help change a light bulb because I couldn't do it. And it was a tricky light bulb, so Mary Nell didn't feel comfortable. I mean, little things like that.
Yeah.
But those people made themselves available, and that's good.
Yeah.
But even if you don't know what to do, just come by, say hi.
Yeah.
Let them know that you are thinking. Bring them a card. Bring them a EGs. Bring them. In my case, it was a smoothie. But yeah, just being there, showing up, let them know that you care. I mean, there's great comfort in that when you feel like kind of the world has forgotten about you, or you're being pushed away.
Yeah.
Those things are significant. So definitely pursue others.
Yeah. I think probably the most important thing I heard you say in this conversation, it was that sense of just being with somebody. How significant that was to you, just not knowing you're not alone, or for your wife to feel like you're not alone if she was out of the house, but just that ability, it's okay if you don't have the words, don't say it, but just to sit and be next to someone. Yeah. How important that is as well when walking through stuff with them.
Yeah. And not saying things is often the right thing, even. We don't have to have the right words to say. Our physical presence is oftentimes just a huge comfort in itself. Yeah. So, like I said, I had several times where people were just there. I knew they were there. I wasn't talking to them because I was sleeping most of the time. But it brought comfort to me and my family. And that's a part of how we show God's love and how he showed his love to me.
Yeah. Well, Lance, we're grateful that you're alive.
Yes.
We're grateful for your presence and for in your ministry. You do so much here at New Life, and invest in men, you invest in students, and invest in so many ways in the life of our church and in our community. And we and I am excited to see what God has in store for you. And we know God, he said, like, you have breath, so God still has a plan for you. And so God still has an incredible plan for you to continue to expand his kingdom and to help people grow in their relationship with him. And so thank you for your willingness to share, but also thanks for your willingness to continue to advance God's work in people's lives. And so we're grateful for that.
Thank you.
And thank you for what you do in the life of our church and our community.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
God is good.
Yeah, he is good. And so hopefully as you listen to this, that even just wherever you're at in life, maybe the things in your past, the things that you are going through right now, or the reality of things that are going to come to you tomorrow, that this is a reminder, and this is an encouragement to you that God is good, and God loves you, and God is pursuing you, and he's always with you. And as you hear Lance's story, you will be encouraged with that. And you look for ways to go encourage and bless other people as they walk through those things too. And so that's this month's Leading Well conversation.
Thank you for listening to the Leading Well podcast. Let us know your thoughts by leaving your review. Be sure to subscribe and share these episodes through iTunes, Google Play, and Podbean. You can also connect with us on Facebook and Instagram. Until next time, continue to look for ways to unleash your leadership potential to make a difference.